Please close your eyes and imagine. Imagine living in a place where, for generations, your family has never known true independence. A place where your voice in the federal government is limited and your ability to shape your own future is constrained. We Americans hold certain values dear: independence, self-determination, and the right to govern ourselves. These principles shaped the very foundation of the United States. Think about the Revolutionary War, the fight for freedom, the ideals enshrined in our Constitution. This is what it means to be an American, right? I bet you thought I was talking about the 13 colonies, when they were trying to secede from England because they were being repressed for the ideas that they had, the religions they were practicing, and the ideals that they held. But I'm actually talking about Puerto Rico. Hi, my name is Alexis, and I am a student in the Negotiations and Conflict Management program at the University of Baltimore. The title of my capstone project is Decolonizing Puerto Rico, a case study of Puerto Rico and investigating Puerto Rican Islander sentiments concerning Puerto Rico's status. Before I get into the background of Puerto Rico's colonial history, let me share a shocking statistic. Puerto Rico has held 7 referendums on its political status. In 4 of the last 7 referendums, the majority has voted in favor of statehood. In fact, 58% of those polled most recently support statehood. Yet Puerto Rico remains in a state of political ambiguity, having been under the control of Western powers for over 500 years, since 1493. To understand Puerto Rico's current situation, we need to look at its history. Puerto Rico has a tumultuous past marked by colonization, first by Spain, and then by the United States. From 1508 until 1898, Spain used the island as a colony for trade, sugar, and slavery. The U.S. took over control from the Spanish in 1898 through the Treaty of Paris. Since the U.S. took over control from Spain, they have put forth legislation reshaping and molding Puerto Rico's status and identity. These include the Foraker Act, which imposed a civilian government, which is a government led by elected officials, and the Jones Act, which forced U.S. citizenship without full rights, such as being able to vote for the president. As Michelle Rolfe Trujillo, a leading scholar on decolonization, stated, "History is the fruit of power, but itself is never so transparent that its analysis becomes superfluous. The ultimate mark of power may be its invisibility, the ultimate challenge, the exposition of its roots." This highlights the power dynamics at play between the United States and Puerto Rico. Current legislation, which is circling in Congress concerning Puerto Rico's status, is called the Puerto Rico Status Act, which offers a choice of 3 status options for Puerto Ricans to vote on. The first is statehood. Statehood would integrate Puerto Rico as the 51st state of the United States, granting full representation in Congress, voting rights in presidential elections, and access to federal funding and programs on equal terms with existing states. The second option is independence. Independence would establish Puerto Rico as a fully sovereign nation, separate from the United States, allowing it to form its own government, constitution, and international relations without U.S. oversight. The third and final option proposed for changing Puerto Rico's status would be to change to a free association state. Free association would create a mutually agreed upon relationship where Puerto Rico becomes a sovereign nation but maintains a political and economic partnership with the United States, potentially losing U.S. citizenship while still receiving some federal support. But the Puerto Rico Status Act lacks enforcement and clarity. After Puerto Ricans would vote on said status, there are no mechanisms in place to actually enact what the Puerto Ricans want to happen with Puerto Rico. To provide context, it's helpful to briefly look at other decolonization scenarios, such as Haiti and Hawaii. Haiti achieved independence, but faced long-term economic repercussions due to debts owed to France and that they are still paying to France. Hawaii became a state, but this transition raised concerns about the loss of native Hawaiian sovereignty and culture, and Puerto Ricans are afraid that they will have to learn and speak in English wholly and forget about their Spanish roots, forget about speaking Spanish in their schools, and many other repercussions that might come with becoming a state. Yet despite a wealth of writing, I could not find studies which center Puerto Rican voices on the island. That's where my research comes in. My research purpose was to explore the perspectives of Puerto Rican university students, professors, and administrators on Puerto Rico's political status and potential paths for decolonization. My research questions are: what are the perspectives of Puerto Rican university students, professors, and administrators concerning Puerto Rico's political status and potential paths for decolonization through either independence, statehood, or free association? And secondly, how can exploring the Puerto Rican perspective contribute to the development of enforcement mechanisms that will redefine Puerto Rico's relationship with the United States and positively impact the everyday lives of Puerto Ricans? It's crucial to consider these voices because these individuals have firsthand knowledge of Puerto Rico's relationship with the US's impact on daily life on the island. They're also engaged in higher education, making them well suited to analyze and reflect on these complex issues. Qualitative methods are essential here because they allowed me to evaluate the voices of real people, capturing the nuances of their experiences and perspectives. By understanding the desires and concerns of the Puerto Rican people, we can work towards solutions that not only address Puerto Rico's political status, but also lead to positive change in their everyday lives. My study was a qualitative case study. I surveyed 36 Puerto Rican participants, including only students, professors, and administrators at universities across Puerto Rico. Participants were asked open-ended questions about statehood, independence, and free association, and what their opinions were around those statuses, if they had any, and what they felt would be best for the island. Their words, not mine, drive this analysis. Thanks to strong relationships on the island, I was able to reach university networks and capture a range of perspectives rooted in real life, not theory. This word cloud visually represents the most frequently used words by participants in their responses. The size of the word corresponds to the frequency with which the word appears in the responses. Clearly, as you can see here, independence and statehood are the biggest words that stand out. Puerto Ricans want independence. They want to be their own sovereign nation and to be able to shape their future for themselves without any influence from other cultures, from other states, and from other sovereign powers. But they recognize that after so many years, hundreds of years, of being under the colonial rule of other countries, that they don't believe that they can be fully independent. So they believe that statehood is the next best option. They would still have support from the United States, but as their own state, they would be able to shape their culture and who they are in the grand landscape of what the United States is. I want to share some of the quotes from participants to illustrate their perspectives. Statehood would mean losing our culture. We feel like second-class citizens. It's impossible to survive while being independent. We need the right to decide our laws, economy, and priorities. This study revealed 4 key themes through the voices of the participants. The first was cultural and national identity. Many fear that statehood could erase Puerto Rico's uniqueness. The second is frustration and political powerlessness. Participants felt ignored and disconnected from true representation. They can't vote for the United States president, and they feel like they aren't considered in decisions when it comes to the everyday lives of people living on the island. The third is a desire for self-determination. Across all positions, people wanted to decide for themselves. They wanted the autonomy to be able to speak up and speak out about how their lives are impacted by the decisions that their government makes and by the decisions that the US makes in connection to Puerto Rico. And fourth, they have concerns about economic viability. Independence feels noble to them, but risky. Statehood feels stable, but assimilative. They do not want to lose their culture, who they are, their food, the way that they go to school, and all the other things that they associate with being Puerto Rican. It's not a simple choice. It's not a yes or no. It's survival versus sovereignty. Culture versus control. Past versus possibility. Here's what we should do going forward to help elevate Puerto Rican voices and make sure that the US government and also the Puerto Rican government is listening to what Puerto Ricans have to say about how they want to live their lives and what they want their future to be for themselves and for the next generation. First, Puerto Rican voices must be centered in any future legislation. Right now, when you look at legislation, it doesn't really look like the voices of the public are involved in decisions that are being made. Yes, referendums are held on the island, and currently the Puerto Rico Status Act wants to give Puerto Ricans the choice to vote on what they think their status should be, but there are no implementation mechanisms. There's no way of knowing what that Puerto Ricans understand what each status option would implicate for the island and for living on the island every day. And there's just no inclusion of Puerto Ricans and how they feel about everything that's going on. So the second thing that we must consider is that Congress must commit to enforcing referendum outcomes. They can no longer continue to put forth legislation or hold referendums on the island and then at the end of the day leave and be satisfied with that. People living on the island are real people, and they're American citizens. They're US citizens, and they should be considered the same as any citizen who lives on the mainland of the United States. And so their voices are important, and what happens to them, anything that happens to them, should include their perspectives. The third and final consideration that we should take into account is that future studies should include more sectors of the Puerto Rican diaspora. This includes people in the health industry, people in the arts, and the youth. I was only able to focus on university students, professors, and administrators, but I'm sure there's a wealth of information coming from more of the Puerto Rican diaspora on the island and maybe even off the island that live on the mainland. But I'll leave you with this. After hearing directly from those living on the island, do you believe any of these status options are enough? Do you think statehood solves it all? Does independence make sense without stability? Is free association too vague to matter? This isn't just a political question. It's a human one. Let's not allow Puerto Rico to remain invisible. Just remember that decolonization is not a metaphor. It's a mandate. Thank you for listening, and please ask any questions you have below in the comment section. If you like what you saw, go ahead and hit that like button at the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that this inspired you to help Puerto Ricans have a voice and elevate their position so that they can decide their future for themselves. Thank you.